In this video, I'm going to go over QFIN, QFIN. This one was one that I had poor execution on, and I think it's a good one to go over in the many aspects of it in this short little video. So one of the first things that this particular chart had going for itself was the fact that it corrected less than 50%, while many of the other growth names did correct more than that. So from that point of view, this was a fairly solid base. It was a cup formation, and it had the fundamentals. The future estimates aren't the best, and then right before its breakout this week, and especially today, it was basically from that point of view, in one of the top 40 groups in the market, right? From an ownership point of view, ownership is just starting to increase. And over a span of a year, it's almost doubled, right? And it's still fairly low ownership, fairly early in the cycle, a fairly young name, I would say. So the edges on this particular name, the base depth was less than 50%. That's a positive overall, especially given the growth correction. There were many RS days from 14, 17, 18, and 19 that was in this area. So if we go hover over 14 at about this day when the S&P started moving down, right? So let's make it really, really clear. So this area when the S&P started moving down, the name started to pick up steam and exhibit RS days on the 14th, the 17th, the 18th, and 19th. So this is really when, when I started tracking this particular formation, right? Overall, I like the action of it and the numbers, right? And being one of the top 40. So it started moving up the ranks, sort of bugging me, particularly in this area, so that, I wasn't interested in positioning here. Mostly because it had earnings coming up, right? But once it reported earnings and the reaction to earnings wasn't really anything. But all of these ingredients, right? The first three, and then the last one that I had on my radar for this particular name is the fact that the IBT market was active on this day within the base as well. So we see within this particular base, within this particular base, we see this IBT transaction, this transaction, and then this was actually post breakout on this day. So all of these things, right, sort of add up from a fundamental point of view. It had good characteristics. It had RS days. At a base depth of less than 50%, and then the IBT market. So basically what the IBT market tells us is that this name is going to get directional in a big way, right? Now that direction can be down, or that direction could be up, right? But given the fact that, it was exhibiting RS in this area right before its earnings on this particular day, right? So that gives you, a probability of what is about to come for this particular name in the future, without knowing or without predicting that this is going to happen this particular week, right? It's all about probabilities. We have a probabilistic mindset in the markets. We don't know what's going to happen next, but we want to position or put ourselves in a situation where if a name has these particular edges, the likelihood of the move being one that does this is far more than a name that would collapse on you, right? So that's from an edge point of view, listing the edges and things of that nature. That's this is basically the work that you do before the trade actually triggers or takes place. This is all, these are facts. It had RS days on these days. That's a fact. It had good fundamentals. That's a fact, right? It reported earnings on the current quarter, and it reported 458% and 22% ROE of 39.1. It was a fact that This was one of the top 40 groups. So all of these sort of build a thesis for you to even consider this name over the other names in the market, right? When your edges add up as a whole, then you could potentially position in a winning stock, right? So that's the first step, like we discussed in the last video where I was going over my trades. The first thing is you have to identify an edge, right? In this case, the edge was the RS days. The fundamentals were pretty good. We could even say it was a top group, right? Buying stocks in the top group. That could be a consistent edge that you could work on. And the other one, from a money flow point of view, is that the IBT markets were active. The second one is you have to create a plan, right? And then the third is really the execution. And we talked about this in the June portfolio update. So we now have identified our edges, right? And that takes time, right? May 14, it bugs you. May 17, it's going to bug you. May 18 is going to bug you. May 19, it's going to bug you, right? Especially when the market is weak and the name is outperforming the markets. That sort of the RS phenomena only happens if institutions step up. If institutions step up to the plate and they support that stock in this area when the S&P was retracing on those particular days, right? That's the reason we track RS in the first place. So now that we have our edges established, now you really need a plan at this point to, it's going to make your focus list. It's going to be on your focus list so that at least, at the very least, you have a chance to potentially be in this name, right? So you did your homework with the edges. Now you're planning an entry. So you move it to your focus list. You create a position sizing plan for this particular name, right? So given the edges at play, and especially that it was after, post earnings, there's enough going on here for me to put 18% of this on this. That's my max allocation on a per name basis, and I had the cash coming into the session today to make that happen, but it just so happens I didn't execute well on this. So the third is really execution, and we're going to cover that a little bit, and I think most of you are really looking for that portion, and you don't. This is really the meat on the bone. The execution is a matter of your planning coming together so that you can execute. So let's this is a 78-minute chart, and I highly recommend you guys use 78-minute charts instead of the hourly charts. The reason for that is equally parses out the session into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars. I believe, if I'm not counting, if I'm counting right. But use 78-minute charts instead of the hourly. It's a much better representation from our hourly point of view. So let's cover execution now, right? How do you've planned this name out, you have the edges at play, you do your position sizing plan, and now what? Now it's time to execute and actually take the trade when it presents itself. So in this particular area, what I saw was the name was attempting 30, and hover over these, right? The high was 30.65 on this day. The high was 30.16 on this day. The high was 29.8 on this day. This is the day I believe it reported earnings, and this volume, just to clear up any confusion, this is not the highest daily volume ever. The reason being is this was related to rebalancing on close. So all of this volume, most of it came in on close. So that sort of skewed the volume up a little bit. But besides that, I mean, That can be a bit misleading from a hindsight point of view. And you see this volume, it had such a high volume. It was so obvious at this point, but really this was rebalancing volume. And with all of this volume being a narrower range, this was basically rebalancing volume is what I'm trying to get at. So the next thing is, now you see that there's resistance developing at that 30 because attempted 30 failed, attempted 30 failed, right below 30 failed, and then this one was basically a scratch of a day, held the 10 DMA that's rising, right? We saw RS days in this area, so all this colored area, these were RS days, right? Now it's bugging you. Now you're trying to find an entry point because you're trying to execute a trade on this particular name that's going to net you a good return in the markets, given the fact that these were the edges at play, especially this one, right? And this one sort of tells you that a larger move is coming, especially the IBT market sort of tells you that a directional move is coming and you need to get prepared. And then given the fact that we had RS days and IBT, the highly likelihood of a favorable outcome to the upside was a little bit higher than the downside. So you build the sizing plan. Now you spot a entry, which is $30, right? Runs up into 30 resistance, runs up into 30 resistance, runs up into 29.8, sort of does nothing, washes out the next day, holds the 10 DMA. And then this was really the first time when, if we just draw a line at 30, let's just draw a line at 30, a little bit better than that. So it goes through the $1.30 mark, right? On big volume, on green. This was high relative volume that came in sort of the first hour, I believe. And then at this point, I had not executed the trade as well. So it went through the 30, rallied all day down to 34 area. The next day, it opened down and rallied up right to the 35 area, faded, and then came right back. And it gave you another chance yesterday to sort of position in it once again. So this would have been your first opportunity. This day would have been your first opportunity through the $30 mark if you did your plan and then executed that plan well. And then the other opportunity was yesterday when it held the $30 mark, right? So it held the $30 mark, rallied a little bit, and then sort of faded. So yesterday, personally, I positioned in this area when I saw it's holding the 30, and I know there's volume that came in on this particular day, right? This day. And now it's coming in on relatively lower volume compared to this day. So the probabilities of the $30 mark holding, because it's tested once, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. The 5th time it breaks. Now it's doing a retest. This was yesterday. Now we're talking about this candle. Does a retest a position, and then I didn't have enough cushion, and everything else in my portfolio was a little bit sluggish. So I decided it's not a good enough reason to carry overnight risk. And then this was one of the top ones that I had on my list this morning. And then once again, I didn't really execute too well. So this one, let's cover today's action, which is June 4th action, and how you could still sort of, could have caught this name. Was basically, this is the Wick area from the prior day. So the Wick is the open to close. So if we draw something like this and something like this, right? This is the Wick area from prior day. This is on a smaller frame. This is really this from the open to the close. That's the wick area. The name opens in the wick. So it opens in the wick, right, of the prior day. So that means it's trying to show resilience to prior day's price action. And that's a positive, right? We just broke out of 30. We tried 5 times. We broke out of 30 on volume. We come in, we test back test the 30, right? We sort of fade all day. And then we open in the wick of the prior day and then literally perform, which was to a tune of 17% in a single day. So so it opens in the wick and then it rallies up and out, right, at this point, and then came back, tested to respect 35, and then really closed strong on the session into 36. So I want to show you, a trade takes a couple of days to weeks to really develop itself to a point where 30 was really the spot on this, right? 30 was really the spot on this, and you get 6.5 points out of it, right? And this doesn't happen if there are no RS days, if it's not a fundamentally sound name, right? Not a good name from a fundamental point of view, at least in this case. The IBT market being active is another tip-off for you, right? And then the base depth and the cup structure of less than basically 40% depth. Sort of all those things add up. And really this one is the one that it gets the name on your radar in this area. If you're doing your proper homework and daily routines, right? And then you identify entry, then it's up to you to execute when you see that volume. So a lot of, this is over a matter of, it really starts at this point. It really starts early May, right? It works itself, has earnings. You can't really hold because you might not have enough cushion. Even if you get started at 25, maybe you had enough cushion to hold. That's a different story. But even after that, you had ample time to sort of get some sort of return out of this particular name. So we're running about 18 minutes, and I think, I wanted to cover what's important. And you have to learn this and learn to do this yourself, right? Because we're not a stock picking machine that's going to sit here and tell you what to buy, what to sell, things of that. That's not our goal with the service. So one of the first things is you're identifying edges. The second thing is your planning, which includes a position sizing plan, right? And includes your daily routine, which basically means it's going to make your focus list, right? Once it's on your focus, all of these things go together. And the last thing is you get to execute, right? And if you don't do the first one, if you don't do the second one, then you can't do the last one. Many of us are built we want instant reward, right? We don't want to do 1 and 2. We don't want to do 1 and 2, but we want 3. We want to catch 30 to 36 moves. We want to catch these sort of moves, right? But we don't want to do 1 and 2. So that's why we emphasize, if you have a position sizing plan and you go 18% into this name from the $30 mark, this position basically netted you a 20% return on a 20% return on the capital that you put in to it. So we're hitting the 20 minute mark here. So let me know if you have any comments, questions, and I hope you guys see that 3-step. Identify your edges, build your plan by doing a position sizing plan plus a daily routine, right? Daily routine includes your scans and things of that nature, and then you get to execute in the markets.